Brilliant or stupid indeed for Fight Club. I want to welcome everyone here to, you'll probably agree, to all the zero viewers we have right now. No, I'm just kidding. But with me tonight is from Hollywood, Chicago. We've had him on the show for, man, it was a long time ago since you were on here last.
Easily over 10 years since we've done
Wow.
shows together. Yeah.
God darn. Time
Think
goes so fast.
about before COVID, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing. Time goes so fast when you get older because it's just like I look at people now and I'm like, wait a minute, I just saw that guy in a movie. How did he age that much? I'm like, oh, 10 years went by.
Well, thanks.
But yeah. But when we're talking about the despair that we feel in society and also kind of like how we want to rebel against it in a way, because, you know, as we get older, there's a little saying from Tyler Durden in the movie that I'll play later about a materialistic society and how we gravitate towards celebrity magazines instead of each other. But before I'm going to get into my thoughts on Fight Club, Pat, would you like to give us a little synopsis of Fight Club and then give me your thoughts?
It's pretty simple. We have Edward Norton playing a very amount of characters. We never know his real name in the film.
Yeah, he goes by Jack, but then it's like narrator. He's credited
right.
as.
So he's addicted to going to self-help groups, you know, for various things like AA and Cancer Anonymous and AIDS societies. And there's a mysterious woman played by Helena Bonham Carter who is also kind of trailing him, and they kind of make an agreement to split him up. But at the same time, he meets a mysterious gentleman on a plane, played by Brad Pitt, Tyler Durden. Is it Durden?
Durden, yeah.
Yeah. And they develop a friendship, and after a night of drinking, start fighting for some reason and feel so cathartic from it, they start the Fight Club. And of course, the first rule of Fight Club is never talk about Fight Club.
Yeah.
Well, this starts a series of events that starts a ball rolling that kind of gets out of control. And the Fight Clubs become almost cultish. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, there's kind of a surprise towards the end to how it all concludes. But basically, it's about Fight Club and how males in society, which we would call incels right now, I guess.
They're very much like Joker, yeah.
Just trying to get out of their system what is ailing them, and it's a little extreme, a little violent, but a little ahead of its time, I think. So there you have it. That's pretty much the summary of the film.
Yeah. And, you know, when I rewatched this movie, I liked it more than I thought I would because I really liked the movie when it first came out. Mm-hmm. But then over time, as I got older, I kind of thought, you know, this is some testosterone-driven, simplistic movie about, well, I'm not happy with my life, so I'm going to go punch someone in the face because that's what men do. And it was kind of a simplistic sort of an examination of masculinity.
Right.
But then I rewatched the film, and there are moments in it that really made me go, you know what, that's right, I can understand this. And there is a little bit of point of concern with the film, which I will address, but I'm going to play this little clip that sort of gives Tyler Durden's theology on life.
Cool. Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. We're slowly learning that fact. And we're very, very pissed off.
Now, when I saw that scene, and I think a lot of people did, they kind of felt like a sense of, yeah, that's me. I'm overlooked, or I'm not happy, you know, because Edward Norton in the film, who plays narrator or Jack or whichever name you want to call him, he doesn't really have a name. He's this guy who lives the ideal life. You know, he has a nice job, a nice apartment, but then when he loses all of it, he starts to see this Tyler Durden guy. And then through Tyler Durden's philosophy, he says that we're a materialistic culture. We care more about celebrity gossip than we do about death or war. And like he said in that speech, when we get older, we realize we're not all going to be rock stars. We're not all going to be celebrities, which is sort of ironic considering Brad Pitt saying that.
Well,
And
it's, you know, in that speech,
yeah,
the anti-consumerism speech, that's how Fight Club evolves in the film. It starts as a kind of a machismo Fight Club, and it takes on the aspects of let's go after the man,
yeah,
you know, so in that way, to me, it's a little ahead of its time. And you mentioned I hadn't seen the film since it came out, so that's 26
wow.
years.
Have you seen it recently for this, or were
Oh
you
yeah,
just
I watched
okay.
it. I watched it
I was about to
this,
say like 27
I'm
years
not
ago.
I'm not gonna try to call up memory, but
Yeah.
it's always interesting when I see a film like this I haven't seen in a long time, what I remember from the first viewing. And the two things I remembered from the first viewing is one, Meatloaf in the movie, of course, which was
With
cool
big
back
boobs.
then,
Yeah.
and he has breasts. And
Yeah.
number two, that when Norton beats himself up in the office to coerce his boss to let him be a consultant. And before it's time, by the way, I'll work from home.
Yeah, I think the movie, like when I'm kind of like talking about Brad Pitt's speech to wrap it up, it was more about how terrorists are made. You know, people feel like they're left over in life, they're
Right.
marginalized, and the movie wasn't exactly promoting terrorism, but it was kind of showing you how someone could gravitate towards that when nothing will really make them happy, because it's kind of talking about how happiness is an illusion in a way. You know, you get your car, you get your house, you get your apartment, but you're still miserable because you're working a shitty job to buy shitty things that you don't need.
Right.
And when someone can't handle the reality of, oh, you're not going to be what you thought you were when you were a child,
Right.
that starts to cause your mind to collapse, or some people's minds. I don't know if this movie speaks to the majority or not. And the movie ends, and I'll just put up the banners, the spoiler banner here. Spoilers, you've been warned. They at the end of the movie, a building explodes while Edward Norton, narrator, who actually turns out to be schizophrenic and Tyler Durden is in his head, he finds a sort of peace in what he does and an understanding and a sense of closure as he's holding hands with Marla, and the building collapses, and you can even see like a little heart shape in the fire of the building. It makes you say, yeah, I could see how when this came out, people thought this was a very pernicious film, because it's a movie that is showing you, it's not just outwardly saying, oh my God, violence is bad, don't kill people, don't explode things. It's showing you through the mindset of someone who's losing it, who doesn't have help, where there like is no real healthcare system to support them. The only way he finds support is to exploit these groups of people who have testicular cancer and all sorts of other dying ailments. And because of a healthcare system that doesn't really know how to support people like him, who in fact may not even be able to get help, you see how someone who's not able to get help forms into a sort of monster who creates a cult, who ends up, you know, sort of giving into their animalistic primal instincts that men do. And it's also sort of a fuck you to the Generation X and the whole advertising sort of time. Well, it's funny, it echoes today too.
When you approached me on this, you gave me several films, and because you wanted to talk about themes of mental health, and you mentioned the Joker earlier, the film The Joker. What struck me about that film, especially, was there was more overt references to how poor, lower income people have no access to mental health care, and they need it the most. In this film, the narrator, Jack, he's more of a middle class guy, maybe an upper middle class guy, but he's seeking help either. He's feeling like the world has abandoned him. And in that abandonment, Fight Club is the only way that he's found any authenticity. that he actually has feelings again after years of not having feelings. And it's always interesting to talk about the mental health care system in America because it's desperate. I think it's the greatest health crisis in America right now, and especially in these times where everything is so, difficult to deal with, especially if you're at one end of the political spectrum or the other. And I see the movie as something ahead of its time.
Yeah, it's something where it examined how we've become consumerists, I think, because of the expansion of media. Because by 1999, the internet was starting to come around,
Right.
and we started to get more television shows that were like television stations that went for like 24/7, and you would get a bombardment of commercials, and everyone's telling you, hey, if you drink this certain beer, you're going to fit in. If you buy this car, you're going to fit into the club. And when people realize that, hey, I actually am in this club, but I'm still not happy, or I'm not rich enough to join this club, people from both socioeconomical classes get together to actually find a release in the numbness of life. Like
Right.
the reason they fight each other isn't just to release frustration and anger, it's just to feel something.
Right.
Because everything is so mundane, so depressing, and just the way society works in general doesn't mend well with these guys, either because they don't know how to handle adulthood or depression, or because they're literally going insane. So the Fight Club is sort of a representation of, you know what? Yeah, I'm getting my frustration out, but at the same time, when I'm getting punched in the face and I feel pain, I actually feel like I'm alive for the first time. It's kind of like guys who are in war zones who can't get enough of it. I don't think it's a real kind of person, but this kind of like a movie character type where it's like the guy who always has to come back like Rambo.
Well, no, I think it's legitimate. And you brought up a good point that a lot of the people who were participating in Fight Club were part of that class that had to work all through COVID, by the way. Just the guys are, picking up the garbage and cleaning the hotels and actually even being cops, which was very interesting to me. But there is a level of frustration at that level, again, in America, where there's not care available. I mean, let's face it, there's not really good care available to you and I either, unless we want to concentrate on trying to find it and, expending a lot of income to get to the root of it. And that's the point, too, that mental health care is something that is a delicate beast that takes sometimes years to shush out of some people. And people have neither the time nor money to do it, so they just live with it. And that's why things like Fight Club occur. And that's why how Fight Club evolves into something more dangerous, because I got nowhere else to go, man.
Yeah. It's sort of like it's a feeling of nihilism and despair that someone like Jack, who here's the thing is, I think even if he could get help, he's incurable in some ways. He's like Michael Myers. He can't help but kill. Like, I don't think he's intentionally like, I'm gonna kill everyone, but he can't, like, the voices in his head. And the interesting thing about this movie, I just thought about it now, it's not about the voices in your head that doom and curse you. It frees you. But at the same time, he's cursed by it, because I don't think there's going to be a good ending for Tyler, the real Tyler Durden, which is narrator Edward Norton. His ending is probably going to wind up in jail or dead. But I think there was a follow-up to Fight Club by the author of the book and the movie, which was Chuck Paul, who, oh my God, I cannot say his name. yeah. But
it's Palahniuk, I would say would be the
Palahniuk. Okay, Palahniuk.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with names. It's like my kryptonite.
You do radio too, so I always have to look up names to make sure I'm pronouncing them correctly. And luckily on the internet now, if you have a tough name, they have a pronunciation guide for it. So
yeah, I'll Google it and see like word,
Yeah.
like I'll see it like spoken out. Like there is no way I would
yeah,
know
and
how to
then I
say
spell it
Chiwetel.
phonetically on the script. So yeah.
Yeah, like I could never figure out Chiwetel Ejiofor if I just looked at it. I need that
Well,
pronounced.
you're pretty good at it now.
Yeah, I've mastered it at this point. But no, the movie is talking about class status, but it's kind of like a reflection of the baby boomer generation, where the characters they're like Generation X. They're not where they really want to be, and they see these guys who were once like Greenpeace, screw the man, down with the corporation, now being a part of the corporation. And one scene that sort of envelops that is when Tyler and Jack are walking around and they have baseball bats and they're smashing up Beetle cars. It was because they hated the Beetle cars. They thought it was created by baby boomers to sell to Generation X, so then they can feel like they're cool and they're part of a system when it's just a hollow piece of crap. And they kind of had things like that. It was very much like a hey, because it's funny now people have the term okay boomer, and this movie came out before they were saying that. So this is sort of a movie that's very grunge. It's very much against the fabric of society and how we operate. And the most interesting thing about it is that they have a character who isn't a reliable narrator. And when they come to the big twist in the end, I think it worked in a lot of ways, but it's blatantly obvious when you see the film again. There's so many clues throughout it. Like there's little flashes of Tyler when Edward Norton's walking around, and I think it was just because he had insomnia, and that's what caused it. And
one of the funny things that I thought was a running gag, which of course I didn't pick up the first time because I was seeing it for the first time in 26 years. But they find the narrator finds a bunch of writings left behind in the old house that he starts to squat in, and it was a series of articles about body parts, and it was I am Jack's bile duct, and I am Jack's, so he keeps bringing that up until he finally says I am Jack's wasted life.
Yeah.
And I think as I've gotten older, I don't know what kind of vision I had for myself. I guess I wanted to do this, and I was lucky enough to get a chance to do it. But when you come into my realm of age, you realize that your influence in the world is very, very limited. You don't really have much influence in the world. And I think if anything, when I was younger, I thought, oh, someday I'll have some influence. And you see the people who actually do have influence, and they, number one, squander it for power and money, or they never have enough time to implement, something that could be positive or progressive. So we live in a society where you're frustrated on either end because you can never have enough money or power, right? If you're desiring that, if you want that, you never can have enough of that. And if you're on the other side trying to be progressive and forward thinking, you're stymied by those who want power. So it can be a life trip that can really cause mental health problems. And all I know, and I've been going through a tremendous amount of loss in the last several years, and combined with the fact that there is a government in place that I'm not in support of, it has caused some real difficult issues over the last 6 months. And I have to look within myself to try to understand how I'm going to get through this. And I think one of the things that we have difficulties with is the getting through part, because we always have to go out there and put our facade on and pretend that we're this person, right? Mm-hmm. Whether we're in the group with the critics or if we're in a group with my bandmates, all different types and levels of facades that we put up. But but underneath we may be dying. But if we're going to function in society, we can't project that.
Yeah.
And I think the author was saying his rationale in writing the book was he was doing a job and got beat up when he was on a camping trip. He came
Yeah,
back
that's
to
right,
work
yeah.
with scars and black eyes and all that, and everybody was just treating him like it was just another day in the bank. It's just
Yeah.
like, how could that be? But that's what his point was, we're not looking for any kind of connection anymore. And my God, in the digital age, it's gotten just worse.
Yeah.
We're living with a narcissism machine in our pocket.
Yeah.
I'm not judging it, because I certainly love my phone and what I've been able to do with it and what it gives me.
Yeah.
It's a narcissism machine. And
It really is.
And so you can comfort yourself with your political views by using your narcissism machine, and everything seems to be fine, but it's not, because you're not making any human connections.
Yeah. And it's funny when you make a great point there, because I think Fight Club really resonates with this generation, because it's about people trying to find connection, but they never do, because they don't really want to kind of do the same bullshit society always does all the time. Like when we try to blend in with crowds, like maybe we're depressed, maybe we're thinking about something else, we don't really want to talk to anyone, or we want to talk about real issues. We want to talk about real shit, not the weather. And I feel like it is like when Jack is basically rebelling against his job and rebelling against his boss, not just like when he beats himself up. And I think that was an allegory for like when you have mental health problems and you don't know how to take care of yourself, you end up beating yourself up, and that's when people actually listen and give a shit. And that's when he got all his benefits and everything from his job so he could keep his income going.
Well, also too, that was a tip off to what the thing was really about.
Yeah.
Because he's beating himself up.
He's abusing himself while the society abuses him, because his boss, he didn't like physically hurt him, but he would just make his life a living hell. And there was a freedom in hurting himself. It's sort of an allegory for when you're depressed and you want to commit suicide. It feels like, that's actually a way out, which when you wrap that to the ending, that was one part of the movie I never could really get on board with, because everything in a way, like the movie's very hyper realistic. It's very comedic, very darkly comedic, especially the scene where the lady who has cancer in a support group tells everyone she hasn't been laid in forever and she really wants to have sex. I'm like, that is so dark, but so fucking funny, because that's probably something a lot of people with cancer who are no longer really desirable to society, to their image of beauty have. And then it's like you still have your equipment that you want to use.
Have your desire.
Yeah. And we get to the ending where Tyler shoots himself in the mouth and he lives. That's where it's like, okay, it took things where it's like, this is in this guy's head, maybe it never happened, but when he shoots himself in the mouth and then he's okay, I want to think, okay, maybe that was in his head, but I don't think that part was. And that's where the movie got a little too over the top, a little too goofy. The movie has a very 1999 feel, where it's like sort of intentionally like screw you and in your face, which is a little eye rolling, but at the same time it is effective and it does work. But I think a lot of critics didn't like it when it came out, because it was a movie that came off like it was inciting violence, when really it was a movie about how dangerous people are molded.
Well, also, I think it was a different critical world, a different critical time. When you're talking about one of the interesting elements in the film is that they feel like middlemen. They've never been to war. They've never had depression. Well, guess what, buddy? 2 years is 9/11, and then 19 years later is COVID. So we've all gone through some shit now. We're all nobody's a middleman anymore, right? And the buildings tumbling down, very reminiscent of 9/11. In fact, I was thinking about when I said, the two things I remembered. The third thing I remember were the buildings coming down. And in my mind, before I watched the movie again, I thought, was that just an entire apocalypse happening? But it turns out it's just those buildings that they specifically targeted, and he couldn't go back. So they just watched them from that window just tumble down.
Yeah.
But they had a reference to a mass shooting, and they had the buildings tumbling down. You talk about a film that's eerily predicting the future. There is Fight Club.
Yeah, and there was a lot of, I think there was one instance where some kid tried to create like an act of terrorism. I think he was inspired by the scene where like the giant ball is rolling down and crushing everything. Yeah. It was a CGI ball, but it looked great. Some of the CGI didn't age so well, but anyways, I can't. I gotta make sure I stay on point.
No, you're doing fine.
Yeah, I feel like the movie, what it's doing is it felt like people thought, oh yeah, this is inciting terrorism and violence, and I think it was misunderstood because of that. Even when I'm watching it, I kind of had the same reaction I did to Clockwork Orange, where the first time I saw it, I'm like, this movie is disgusting. I can't believe someone made this. Someone as brilliant as Stanley Kubrick. And then the second time I saw it, I went, oh my God, this is brilliant, because it's a bit like Bronson too. It's a movie where you get into the mindset of someone who's not well, and it just shows you how they think and how it's skewered. And it's not trying to openly say it's wrong or anything. It's a movie that, especially this one, Fight Club, is relevant because we constantly live in sort of governments that feel like that can evolve to fascism. And I feel like, especially with the government we have now, people might want to join Project Mayhem, which is not a good idea, but it makes you understand how someone can feel that despair, especially when they're looked over, and even when they're not looked over and they're doing well, and life gives them no happiness. It gives them no real purpose to live. The only release you can find is through doing the most horrible things possible,
This was
harming other people.
This was David Fincher's second major film, correct? After Seven,
I think it was.
I was looking over his filmography. I did not know he had a huge background in music video.
Oh yeah. He did a lot of music videos and big visual effects guy. His dad was a writer in the industry, I believe, or a director. And yeah, the thing is, you could tell that Fincher is getting really kind of comfortable with the style, and I kind of miss it when he used 35 millimeter film, because there's a certain grittiness that it captures that you can't really get on digital because it's too clean. And when I was streaming it, it looked extremely clean, but I'm like, God, I would love to see this on a big screen where it's grainy and dirty, because the cinematography really kind of captures your mind as it's decaying, because there's nothing but decay all over on the screen, from Tyler's home to the underground places they're fighting in. Yeah, I had
to watch it during the day, and it was I was like squinting the whole time because it's so dark.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the only place really you can appreciate it is on a big screen, because it's just too, even if you're watching on television, it's too dark. You can't manufacture those subtle tones that dark cinematography has. People create day for night, that old saying. But you're right. Digital has definitely changed the tone of films. As we look back and we see something in 35 or on film, we see the grain, we see the depth, that the cinematographer goes for. Whole science behind that. Interestingly enough, I recently, and I'm not name dropping, but I recently interviewed David Cronenberg.
Whoa.
And he's all for the modernization of film. He said, why? Because he said it's easier to communicate now. We don't have to have this huge crew of people. We don't have to have a scientist working with the film stock to make sure it's okay, but et cetera, et cetera. The same with the cartoonist Bill Plimpton, who's done a lot of great stuff. But he started off with film and doing the singular gel techniques for his animation, and now with the aid of computers, he can still work because he can still produce things from mind to, actuality in mere seconds compared to working with film. So there is an argument there, but you made a great point by saying, hey man, this is the height of that 35 millimeter era with that beautiful cinematography. So
yeah, and I mean, here's the thing: I'm not like I hate digital kind of guy. I like
right.
film instead. I think different movies work for different formats. I was watching Collateral recently, and the digital cinematography looks like shit, but it works for the movie because you're supposed to feel like you're in the streets and you're in this grimy setting, and it has a light range that can capture natural light in a way that film can't. I think
Right.
with a movie like Fight Club, film works better than digital because it's supposed to be grainy and dirty and ugly, and film captures that through their chemical process.
Right.
And yeah, you're gonna see like the gels from those horse hooves, because that's what film is made out of, kids, on the screen, which really captures Edward Norton's kind of decaying state of mind. So it's great for that. But Fincher does do amazing things with digital. I think The Curious Case of Benjamin Button is one of the most beautiful looking films I've seen. There's just some great shots in that trailer where I'm like, oh my God. And that's all done on digital. And it's, they're both comparable, but I think certain films can be shot on film, others digital. 28 weeks later, like we saw recently, I loved how they shot it on iPhones, and you'll never understand what that movie really looks like and how it's like an upgrade of the look of the first film on a computer or on a television or on a phone.
Well,
You have to see it on the screen.
Digital has evolved so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I started this film criticism in 2008, and you could argue that at that point we're in that nether zone of transition, and 10 years later it was fully done. And scientifically, and because databases are getting so layered, we could practically do what we could do on film. The most beautiful film in 1965 can be replicated now into 2025 just using digital. I don't know if that's absolutely true because I'm not a cinematographer, but just as an observer, I can't tell anymore. And like Cronenberg said, he thinks Tarantino's ridiculous for clinging to the film stock because not ridiculous. He didn't say ridiculous. Maybe I said ridiculous. But he was saying that he's just complaining about nothing because technique is technique and science is science, and this is what we've got. Yeah. And it's created a space for a lot of filmmakers to make a film who wouldn't necessarily have done it. A lot of people will say they shouldn't have done it, but they have had the access. So you can make a great movie now for 100 G's, which in 1999 impossible. Yeah. Unless you're Robert Rodriguez or something. Or
he's a wizard.
Or you get lucky and all the factors come together. Like Kevin Smith or Rodriguez or whatever.
Yeah.
The disadvantages, of course, is the field is so crowded now. The field is so crowded. When I think about how many films are coming out this week, when I started in 2008, 3 films a week. Because there was no online presence, right? So it was whatever was going to be in the theater, that's what you saw.
Yep.
And
now it's like 10 screener links a week. Yeah.
No streaming, no online. Now I don't mind the field now because it gives me more options in case I can't see the 2 great movies. I can't see Bride Hard this week.
I just chose not to be honest.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people did, but especially with 28 years later and Elio coming.
Elio, yeah. I screwed it up too. When I wrote the review, I accidentally put in 2 L's because it feels like it should be pronounced Elio with 2 L's, but I took out each one.
It's like you can say Elio and it's okay as long as you don't say Elio. That's what I think they don't want.
Yeah.
They
Are you Italian? But yeah, I mean, but like, we kind of went off on a thing about digital.
No, that's all right. I mean,
that's okay.
It's all part of
it's all
part of this thing. I wanted to talk a little about things I've observed in the film. They like to run in traffic. That's a big thing.
Oh yeah,
I
like
don't
when
know
he's
why
standing in the middle of the traffic with the bus, and then earlier when Marla's standing there.
And the Robert Paulson chant, to me, it aped a little of Christianity because, if Tyler, who doesn't exist actually, is a god, then Paulson becomes his martyr Jesus.
Yeah,
so
and
that's why everybody becomes Rob Paulson when they're dead. So
it's kind of like
it also brought up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, the last point I was going to bring up. It also brings up a really deep and existential question, which is, what is civilization?
Yeah,
we sacrifice ourselves to civilization so we can get the creature comforts that living in these modern times gives us, right? Yeah. So, got to generate the income so you can get the right apartment, so you can get AC, et cetera, et cetera. So all that activity to do that is the thing that strips you of your humanity.
Yeah.
And also says, okay, then what exactly is civilization? What is Fight Club saying about civilization? Is civilization down to our base form where we're just fighting to survive? Or is civilization capitulating and going to the office and making your $75 a year so you can have your apartment and air conditioning? Yeah. So I love that the film brings up these kind of thoughts, and that's, to me, why it'll remain a classic. It will be of its time with the funny computers and no phones, pay phones. And
better times.
When he wanted to get her number, he takes his pad out and writes it on the pad.
Yeah, I know.
And then when his apartment blows up, that's the paper that survives.
Yeah. And that was like the funniest coincidence. Like her paper just happens to land.
Yeah, he just picks it up and it's her phone number.
There it is, And I loved kind of like what they did with Marla in the film. Because a lot of movies, especially like in the 90s, they were very male dominated, and this is a very male dominated film.
One of the great guy films of the era,
Yeah, but Marla stands out because she's a reflection of Jack. She's the person who can't find happiness, so she exploits other groups where people are dying. Like she goes to testicular cancer and she's a woman, and like that's her exploiting things, and it makes Jack upset because she's doing the same thing he is. And I feel like if she was a man, she might have joined the Fight Club and might have been treated as an equal. But at the same time, I think because she's a woman, she's a little more intellectual than Jack is, because she could kind of like handle her emotions by manipulating people. Like, for instance, when she calls up Jack and she says, "I think I have breast cancer, please come over." She winds up being sort of like the rock that settles him down. But at the same time, she's sort of an archetypal character where it's like the woman is the object of desire, but at the same time, she's sort of like the female version of Jack.
I didn't feel like she was an object of desire. I just felt like she was sort of a Greek chorus to the actions that were swirling around her. Her famous line, "I hadn't been F like that since grade school." Did you read about that? There was another line that they had to excise.
There was, yes.
Yeah, well, the line was, "I want to have an abortion with you."
Oh, that was it. Yeah, that was it. But then they made something even worse.
And they said, we can't have that in the film. So they changed it. And then they were horrified, but it was too late. They had to
I love it when filmmakers do that. When they're like, okay, the MPAA said no to us, so we're going to give them something worse, and they're going to be on a deadline, so they have to accept it. Like Trey Parker and Matt Stone with South Park, they do that all the time. Scarface with Brian De Palma, like they had to recut that film like 50 times, and then eventually the studio just gave up and you got like the goriest cut there was. So it's funny because in a way this movie's so anti-establishment, it's sort of a challenging the MPAA, and it's it's also
it's
challenging.
It's definitely one of those border films that nothing is the same afterwards.
Yeah,
It's one of those. I did not know that it was sort of aping the plot of The Graduate. That again, I just found that out reading background stuff. But as I thought about it, it made more sense, especially at the end when what do we do now sort of thing with the buildings plunging down, but they've decided to be together. There was also themes of homoeroticism in it, apparently, especially with Jack's relationship with Helena Bonham Carter's character, and his obsession with Tyler, meaning that he's not quite sure of where he orients in this realm.
I'm not sure if it was quite homoerotic or more like Tyler represents the ideal version of what a man should be, which the movie kind of points out that it's being hypocritical himself, because there's a scene where Jack is talking to Tyler and they see a picture of like a guy in his like, tights, and it's like in a subway. It looks like something you would see from like a from like a clothing store with like the model showing their body, and they go, oh, that's, and Edward Norton says, oh yeah, that's the idea of what a man should be, and Brad Pitt goes, yeah, that's like bullshit or something like that. And the funny thing is, it's like, yeah, but Tyler is the image of in your head of what you want to look like, how you want to act, and
that's why the nature of homoeroticism is there, because he's creating the ideal, what he believes person, not just man. And there's the famous scene with him taking a bath and they're talking together. I mean, that was stuff that was in some of the thematics that I was reading, but it's just something to bring up there. What was another thing? Oh, I love when they said Martha Stewart.
And that was before she went to jail, I think.
And it kind of like it brought to mind to me now, if they directly insult a named person like that, if they say F Martha Stewart, do they have to call Martha Stewart and say, hey, we're going to say F you? Is that okay? But, or because she's a public figure, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
I think that's the case. But
the movie has such a like. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no. Another thing I wanted to bring up is just that this film cost $50 million, man. It cost a lot of money for back in '99, and it didn't make back. It's another one of those famous, great films that didn't make its bank.
But became like a cult classic.
And also on the DVD market, it cleaned up. It was the last great DVD release, right? Before that thing tumbled to the ground.
I think like the DVDs, like they stopped really being like a big thing by like maybe 2009 or 10. Like that's when it stopped. But like it started but like 99 was like
that was a transition point. I think once COVID hit and the digital became it, that was the end, man. You had a whole business that crumbled to the ground. All the man.
And it's funny. We're kind of like Edward Norton or Tyler Durden in a situation where it's like, oh, I remember a past where things are better and we're nostalgic for it, and now we don't like the future that we're living in. So what do we do about that? And the movie. It's funny when you look back at that DVD era. It makes me look fondly at that sort of past, because maybe there wasn't a sense of nostalgia with Edward Norton's character. He was always miserable his whole life. And if there was one point of criticism I had with the movie, is both of them had to have like daddy or parent issues, and that's why they're all screwed up. And it's like, more movies wouldn't take that route. I thought 8mm did a very smart thing where when you find out who the killer is and he has like the gun up to Nicolas Cage, he goes like, "Mommy never raped me, Daddy never beat me," or something like that. Like, I had a good childhood. I'm just screwed up because I'm screwed up. I'm like, that's way more interesting. Like,
That
let's have
8mm. I'm thinking of Super 8, not 8mm.
Oh, no, not the J.J. Abrams one. The what was that director's name? No, the one
Totally
about
different
film.
movies.
Yeah.
It's funny about
Super 8.
just a quick aside about Super 8. It was filmed in my mother's hometown of Weirton, West Virginia, an old mill town. So that's why you saw those grand. They're riding their bicycles under those old mills.
Yeah.
And there's a quick shot, and I had to freeze frame it 100 times until I got it right, of the house that my mother grew up in, and that my grandmother lived from 1929 to 1984. This small little cottage on the side of a hill. The church that she went to every day right across the street. That old Slovak woman. So I said my grandmother's house is in a Spielberg produced movie. Because I didn't know JJ back then.
Yeah. I mean, J.J. Abrams is like a diet Spielberg. He doesn't quite have the substance that Spielberg does, but he has the style. I mean, he's good at setting up the mystery box. Like, he set up the mystery box of The Force Awakens, which I'm going back on that film. I liked it at the time. That movie sucked. Now that I look at it now, and I don't like any of the sequel trilogy movies, but yeah.
There's so much material. I think Mel Brooks in that Spaceballs thing really reamed them. I mean, I was like, there you go. Nobody knows everything about it now. There was only one Star Wars. Now,
that's right.
Blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah. It's just so funny. We have nothing but sequels and reboots, and that's kind of the thing that the characters in this movie rail against. It's like everything's the same, and there's no real escape from it. And yeah, I think in the movie is sort of an exemplification of someone who can't get help, and that's how they end up turning into these monsters that we know. But it's also sort of about our darker side. It's about how we feel marginalized and we want to do something with our lives. But what happens when we don't know what to do? What happens when,
We also lost our caveman. That's another thing. The fight for survival was physical.
Yeah.
For thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Yeah. Suddenly the Industrial Revolution comes, and we can now sit in air-conditioned offices and while away the hours wondering where our lives are going.
And as this film says, in the reality, we're just beasts.
And nobody had to think about that, before 1800 maybe. I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint a time, but accumulated wealth didn't start until maybe the mid-19th. And then it took off to a realm that we still can't get under control.
Yeah. And now we live in an era where it's the upper 1% who ends up shoving everyone down. Like, even someone in Edward Norton's situation where he does have a nice living situation, he's still a prisoner to the constructs of capitalism. He's not the rich guy. He's not on top. He's not the rock star. He's just another guy, and he has trouble handling that reality. And I think, it's really, the movie's an allegory for depression. What do you do when you're so sad that you feel numb from everything, and what can give you release? And we end up leaning towards cults and extremism just to sort of have like a purpose and a meaning in our life when we can't find true human connection. And I mean, luckily in the end, Edward Norton does find connection with Helena Bonham Carter, but we'll see how that's going to work out in the long run. I know there's a graphic novel sequel.
Much like the end of The Graduate. Yeah, they look happy. He took a risk together, but they don't really know what's going to happen afterwards. So
yeah. And stylistically, the movie's beautiful too. It just has this grittiness through the harsh color, because it's like very harsh oranges, very harsh blues. The movie sort of visually is like you're going through like this sort of headache where the room's constantly spinning. Like there's a scene in the beginning, like the opening credits. I think it's supposed to show like how biologically we have this rage that we don't hold back, and that's just part of our biology. We can't control that, and I think that's what the whole DNA sequence and the opening credits resembles. And when you see the apartment and the cameras panning through and you see all the materialistic things, it's like everything in this guy's head is constantly spinning around. The movie, Fincher's background in music videos works really well, because this movie feels like sort of a music video. It has a narration that drives the film, and it doesn't feel forced, because the narration is literally this guy going insane. And the film does a great job of capturing how visually, through the colors, through the constant use of a moving camera, how someone is losing their minds, like literally, like the song says, at the end of the film, where they say, "Where is my mind?" And that's the theme. It's like when you are someone who can't stop what you're going to do, when you're someone who feels like no one cares about you and there's no hope in life, like, yeah, people snap, and we wind up with a nihilistic film like this, which could incite violence from the wrong people. But if you look at it more carefully, you can see this is more of a cautionary tale about how a sort of competition driven society ends up making people feel less than they are. Because when they grow up and they realize they're not special, they just say, fuck it, burn it all.
My concluding thoughts, I suddenly thought about something a friend of mine said, who's had some luck in her life and has a very comfortable existence. And she said that, once we get the shelter, once we get the food, once we get the companionship, once we get this, once all our P's and Q's are in order, then what?
Yeah.
And I think this film kind of shows how you could veer off into that then what. For Jack, the narrator / Tyler, it was blowing up his entire apartment.
Yeah.
Blowing it up. And we find, or at least he found, that he could still survive. And it'll be interesting to see if we ever go into a state, which I believe in these times where conflict has become so prevalent, that we could go back to a state, number one, where we don't have the digital footprint that we have anymore. Like this kind of thing goes away. Would we be able to survive? It's questionable, because we've gotten so used to it. Yeah. So, it's that then what that Fight Club kind of answers. And in that sense, takes us to another realm. And a great film, a must see again, because I froze there. I'd be astounded, but you can still hear me.
Oh yeah, it's great.
There I am.
You're
there I am. A must see film to watch again, to show how timeless and classic it is.
Yeah,
and to see some 90s stuff.
Yeah, out of like 4 Guinnesses, think of the Guinnesses as stars. Since we're in a bar where this guy has just been trapped in time forever.
I liked your opening, by the way. That was
cool. Thanks. Yeah, that was just me with the gimbal messing around.
Well, I
so I got
always been accused of giving. I've always been accused of giving too generous a scores to film, maybe by myself, but I think this is a classic, and it deserves 4 out of 4 for me.
4 out of 4. Wow, that is a big rating. Woo! Yeah,
you have 4 out of 4 as well.
Oh,
I see. You just put it across the screen.
Yeah, no, that was yours.
What was yours?
I think that some of the movies a little too obnoxious, but at the same time, I really embrace how how many chances it takes, because this was a very daring film.
Yeah.
This was a movie meant to incite a reaction from the
Right.
audience.
Shake us up.
Yeah, but it's not a movie that's doing it to be gratuitous or
Nope.
to, try to incite a reaction for no reason. It's really trying to speak to a generation who feels like they've been forgotten. And I mean, my only criticism is it does feel very 99. It feels very Limp Bizkit / like Woodstock 99 ish, very bro-y kind of film. But at the same time, it kind of shows the dangers that can happen when you embrace masculinity so much that you become more like this violent monster that you should hold back,
So
because
what
at
would
the
be
end of
your
the day,
rating then?
you're still a rat in the cage. So at the end of all my rambling, the
No, I
rating,
just want to know your
yeah,
rating.
yeah, I like all the flaws that I feel like are annoying, I actually really like. So I have to give the film, it's almost a 4, but it's a 3.5 out of 4 for me.
That makes sense.
So yeah,
Given your description,
yeah,
I got it. So
yeah. Like
well, this
elements are a
has
little
been a real
outdated, but it still
pleasure.
works. But yeah,
It's been a
Ted,
real pleasure to be on the
yeah,
show, and because looking at this film again was really it was a good thing to do right now. I was like, yes, this is exactly the type of film I need right
yeah,
now.
yeah, because it's a
Not
very kind of,
Elio. It's
yeah,
a
it's a
great film.
very, because it feels like the world is collapsing, and watching revolutionary sort of led films is something that we can relate to. And it's funny because on Saturday, June 21st, I believe, at
Mhm.
7:30, I'm going to be speaking with filmmaker Sujiwa Ekanayake about Andor and why it's so much more
There
than
you
just
go.
Star Wars. It's really a movie
Yeah.
about revolution and the consequences that go with it and sacrifices. And just look up Lutheran
You
Rail
guys,
sacrifice speech. So,
anybody looking at this live, go to that event if you're in
yeah,
Chicago. Where is that going to be, Mike?
it's going to be
I'm
live
helping
just
you.
like this. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right.
It's,
Well,
yeah. But Pat,
well,
thanks for coming on. We can check out all your material, and it is in the link in the description below. It's
thank
Pat
you.
McDonald for Hollywood, Chicago. And you can check out our stuff at ypareviews.com. And the YPA stands for You'll Probably Agree. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Screw the man. No, just kidding. But all right. Viva la resistance.
Screw the man while you be the man.